So today, we're really excited to have Morgan here, Morgan Ingram. Greg always refers to Morgan as the Mr. Beast of pipeline generation, but Morgan is an expert in the early sales process. In really any company, but especially when you're early stage, you're trying to get to product market fit, the ability to build pipeline is critical, right? And so Morgan has some really unique perspectives on how to do outbound sales, how to build pipeline, how to generate business. And he's going to share this with us today. His background, he's done a lot of sales training at big tech companies, Google, Slack. He'll tell you a little bit more about that. But also, he wanted to point out that these are the principles he's going to show you are the same principles that he's using on his business now, that he's used to go from 0 to $1 million and now scaling beyond that. So these are real practical ways that you can build more business. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to him because it's more important to listen to him today, and he can give you a little bit more of some of his experiences.
Perfect. Let's see if the clicker works. The clicker is working, so we're good. Hope everyone's having a fantastic morning. So before I dive into this content and what we're going to talk about today, there are 3 things that if you do these 3 things, we will have a successful workshop. Now, if you decide not to do them, it's not going to be a good time. But if we do these 3 things, we will have a successful workshop. I've done over 500 of these workshops, and people have executed on them to see the results. Just like was mentioned, Slack, Google, Snowflake, Zoom, you name it, any of the top tech companies, I've walked them through this process, and that's how not only their sales teams were successful, but also how they were able to continuously build pipeline even beyond just the sales team. And I'll talk about what that means here in a minute. So the first thing that I'm going to call out as we get into this workshop today is any questions, comments, concerns, complaints. Complain. You can complain if you want to, but bring them up, because the goal of this workshop is to get an understanding of where you are at today. How can we figure out how to get past that obstacle or constraint and then move that into something that you can take action on moving forward? So the goal here is for this to be interactive. I will call some people out. You can raise your hand and ask me a question at any time. There's no hey Q&A at the end. The goal is for this to be interactive. The second thing is everything I'm going to share today has an example or a framework that you can use immediately after. And so as you see on the screen, you'll see the screenshots you can take and things of that nature so you can dive into it. And then the third thing is as I go throughout this presentation and walk you through certain things, we will have some things that you'll actually see that I've done myself in action. So I even did a couple things this morning just to show you how I'm doing this on a day-to-day basis. Like was just mentioned, I'm a founder right now, and all the things that I'm talking about, I actually do, and I have done in the past, and I've trained teams on how to actually do that. So that's where we're going to be at today. Now, I want to get a quick show of hands, because again, the goal is for this to be interactive. For people in the room, if you're at 0 to 1 stage right now, raise your hand. I just want to get a pulse check of where people are at. All right, cool. And then 1 to 5, show of hands where you're at. Okay, cool. And for the people that are 0 to 1, show of hands if you have a sales team. Okay, raise your hand if you are the sales team. All right, cool. Just want to get where we're at. Okay, today. So as we go into this, the first thing I want to talk about is when I got into my first role, it was actually an SDR role, and I wanted to quit 3 months in. And for those of you who have attempted or done outbound before, it is not easy at all. And at the end of that 3 months, I was like, I'm good. I want to go do something else. I'm out. But I had a conversation with my VP of sales at the time, and she was like, hey, look, you need to just dive into this craft and give it 100% for the next 3 months and just see what happens. And I decided to be like, you know what, maybe I'm not doing exactly what I need to be doing. Maybe I can make some adjustments. So I just was thinking about what can I be doing better to generate pipeline and break through the noise. And we're going to talk about that a lot today, is how to break through the noise. That's going to be our main mantra, is how to be innovative and how to do that. So I got in the lab. There's a picture of me back in 2016. And I was like, I have to figure out a way to do that. And what I learned throughout that process is what I'm going to share with you all today, which was how to actually be innovative without being crazy, how to make every single process that you have as a busy founder be very systematic in terms of outbound. And we're going to literally walk through those steps. It's going to be a very tactical session. We're going to get right into it. And I'm also going to walk through how you can leverage content, and this is how I did it, to also support your efforts of what you're looking to do. So through that, this is what ended up happening. So currently, as of today, on LinkedIn, I have over 160,000 followers, and I'll walk you through how you can create content without it being a massive headache and why it's important today. I've been able to scale to a 7-figure business. We were able to hit $1 million in revenue within 16 months, bootstrapped. And so I'll tell you exactly how that process worked. And then all these brands below are the brands that I currently work with today. And our main focus in what we talk about is how do you bridge content and sales together to generate pipeline? And our main focus on that is we help founders and executives build their brand so that they can create content and obviously sell. But the things I'm going to talk about today is once you start doing that, how do you actually be innovative to get out there? So this is everything I'm going to talk about is my own use case, but also how we've helped these companies with their pipeline and others that I've trained as well in order to do that. So with that being said, some people may be like, I don't know if this is going to work. Whatever you're going to tell me is not going to work. This is, I like to call it the Hall of Fame. It could be way more slides than this, but this just shows you all the different people and the things we're going to talk about today do work. And this is from sales reps all the way to founders that have executed this information and have seen results. So what I'm telling you, if you follow the process and follow the system, you will get meetings and you will get pipeline. If you deviate, you didn't hear any of this information from me. You heard it from someone else. But if we talk about what we're going to talk about today, you take action, ask the right questions, we get interactive, you will also see the results that these people have as well. And that's the goal we're going to dive into today. So I always start with this slide because I just found it very interesting. Is 91% of organizations failed their sales quota of last year. And you'll see what were the reasons on why that happened. Now, again, I found this to be a very alarming stat because I was like, this is obviously not good. But as you look at it, there's a couple things that we could point to on why that may be. Marketing conditions, sure, there's a lot of things going on right now. But the two that I always like to point to that I believe in what I've seen from founders across the board is what is the lack of maybe understanding how to do outbounding in a proficient way. So that could be lack of experience or skill, but also time management because there's so many other things going on. How do I actually get time to build pipeline in the way that I need to? And so the main things we're going to talk about today is what are the things that you can do systematically so that you don't feel like you're overwhelmed and wasting time and doing the things we need to do. And so I always pull this up. I worked at JB Sales, John Barrows. If you don't know who he is, he's the one I worked with, and he's the one who also is Salesforce, all these big tech companies, and he's known for that. And I always put this up here as we start getting into the tactics here, is control what you can control. So obviously this is going to be external factors that you have no control over. There are going to be things that happen that you don't even know what's going to happen. But what we're going to focus on is how can we make sure that every single day we can control what we control, whether our effort, attitude, and how we treat people overall. And you're going to see how these techniques go into that. And so as we talk about why evolving in sales, there's a couple things that are going on. Market is really noisy, right? And we're going to talk about that. It's one of the steps breaking through the noise. Everyone's doing the same thing, and y'all probably seen the same AI messages you get in your inbox, and you're like, what is going on? And also, why we need to evolve is we have to figure out how can buyers respect our approach. And so when we go into that, these are the 4 pillars that we're going to be walking through today to generate that pipeline. So one is the overall theme, which is breaking through the noise. Everything I'm going to talk about today is going to be new information, something you may have not seen before, or maybe you've seen it and you're like, I've wanted to try it and here's a way how to do it. We're going to talk about how to become omnipresent on social. Primarily, probably for most of you in the room, is going to be LinkedIn, but whatever social you're on, we can talk about that. Standing out in the inbox, so cold emails, I still believe that it's very strong. Right? I'm assuming none of you in this room want to go do cold calls every single day. Maybe some of y'all do, I don't know, but probably not. So email's a good way of going about it and still owning your time. And then we'll talk about how to run a sales process once you book these meetings that is super straightforward and clear that you can obviously modify across the way when you get started. So what we said, let's just right into it. So This is actually the most important thing I'm going to say to you today is how do you actually book a lot of meetings, build pipeline, and sell? And it's just this mantra: be brief, be brilliant, be gone. Because if you're brief, that's what people want to see. Be brilliant, we're going to talk about that in terms of messaging. And then be gone, you don't want to say a whole lot that you don't need to. And so as I've analyzed over hundreds and thousands of emails, looked at a lot of different sales messaging, the goal is being brief, being brilliant, being gone. And you all probably read your own emails, and you probably don't see a lot of great emails. Like, if I said it, let's just show hands up. Let's just check the room real quick. How many of you received a good email in the past 6 months? Okay. So keep your hands up if you actually see a good email. Okay, I want everyone else, keep your hands up. I want everyone else to look around the room real quick. Look how many people are raising their hand. Okay, so when you got a good email, what did it say? Why was it relevant?
I get a lot of emails, so there's a very, very small percentage that leave good email. What I like to look at is, so I'd say the things that make good emails stand out are, frankly, if it's like clever, funny, there's something about it that I just find interesting. Like that it's just unique from a messaging perspective will make it stand out. But yeah, usually if they're just very to the point, if they use some kind of metric in there, if it's extremely relevant to what I do, that helps. I feel like it's
Got it. What if they're not funny? Is it over?
It's got to be something that's going to make me open it, right?
Okay.
So it's either got to be funny or it's got to. Sometimes they'll use some tricks in the subject line that make me like have to open it. It's like the meeting next week kind of thing. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh crap, there's a meeting next week. So sometimes it's tricks like that that make me tricky to open it.
Okay. So now I got to do tricks to get you to. How about yourself? What you saw an email? What made it relevant? Why was it important?
Someone sent me an email that had like a video, like GIF encoded in it that
Okay.
had our name on it.
Okay.
And it was a recruiter trying to get my attention, but it was a brilliant email. Like I opened it, watched that 1.5-minute video, and like he clearly did his research, and I thought it was really clever. It stood out, and yeah, that worked for me.
Okay. Awesome. And you watched the video.
I watched the video and I reached back out to him because I was like, that's cool. That's different.
Awesome.
And he clearly did his homework. I feel like most people have reached out to him.
Did you send a video back?
No, I didn't say
Okay, I thought you were going to be video boys. I don't know, back and forth. I don't know. Okay, so you saw the video, you really liked it. Quick show of hands. Anyone in the room doing video in their sales process at all right now? Okay, so a couple people. Okay, we're going to talk about today. And then Matt, I know that you just mentioned you had your hand raised. What was an email in the past 6 months that you saw that was relevant?
Yeah, more maybe a lot of numbers. Ideally, the numbers are like numbers I want to see.
Yep.
So growth rates or your revenue, and then in addition, a lot of links. Like, don't tell me like a story in an email. Give me 5 links that I can look into. And it's really those two qualities. I'll always respond to an email. We have a lot of links and good numbers.
Cool, awesome. So data, numbers, that was for you. Okay, so just a couple things. And probably the key in these emails that you probably saw, and we'll go into the different pieces, is you want to make sure, how can I get my point across as fast as possible, right? That's the key. And so we're going to dive into how you can start doing that by becoming omnipresent. Now, most of you in this room, I'm going to assume, probably are leveraging LinkedIn in some way, or your audience lives there. Is there anyone in the room where your audience does not socially live on LinkedIn? Like you think they're somewhere else? Okay, where else? What other platform?
It's healthcare, so these are crusty nurses that don't even know LinkedIn exists sometimes.
Okay.
Maybe half our audience is on LinkedIn.
So it could be Facebook, maybe at the end of the day, potentially.
Yeah, they're going to be in the normal socials as far as the normal day-to-day.
Okay.
There's Doximity, some other places.
Okay, cool. So for the most part, everyone in this room, you're probably focused on that. So you'll see here's just a breakdown of LinkedIn. And I always like showing this to show you how active it is continuously becoming, with the major stat of obviously 90% of the Fortune 500s are leveraging LinkedIn, and more buyers are getting on there. This year, they just crossed 1 billion members. So clearly this is a place that you want to be. So then it becomes, what can you be doing as a founder to put yourself out there to make sure you get certain meetings? So we're going to start breaking down how to get started. And I just call this influence is the new outbound. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by this is it's not just about having really good messaging and outbound messaging, which we will talk about. From what I've seen in working with founders and working with other people, it's about how do you actually mix good content presence with really good outbound messaging that is innovative and shows your personality or your story in a bite-sized way. That's the key. And the more that we can think about this, the more that you will stand out. And it's allowed me to generate pipeline, but it also has allowed others to do the same thing. So we have to look this in combination because, like we said earlier, there is so much noise, there is so much going on. So we have to find out ways to do that. So I'm gonna break down how can you start optimizing your profile today to increase your profile views. So I've walked someone through this, they follow this framework I'm about to tell you, and they saw a 300% increase in their profile views by making these small tweaks I'm about to tell you. So the first thing is profile picture. I'm not a photographer, I'm not a designer, but all I tell people is just don't look like you're in the dark or in a closet. It's like that straightforward. Like just don't look crazy, right? So look presentable. You see what I have here, straightforward. The second most important thing about your profile is your headline. Your headline is the first thing that people see, or the second most important thing that they see when you send a connection request, when you comment, when you send a message. This is what they see. So if you have something that doesn't have details around what you do, they're not going to understand what you're about. So for most people in the room, you could literally just copy the same exact thing I have here, which is what is the value you bring? What's the problem that you solve? That's basically right there. And then you put CEO, founder of whatever company you're at. So obviously there's name recognition. Now, the reason that this part is important, most people don't know this and LinkedIn doesn't tell people, is this is a searchable thing. So if people go on LinkedIn and search for something, this will come up in the search. So it's important that you put something here that your potential buyer is searching for. Now, I have no idea for each person in this room what that is, but you would know better than me. But this is important because if you don't have something searchable here, you will not show up in the searches, which LinkedIn does tell you if people do search for you and where they find you. And I've identified by making these small tweaks, because I did this, I started showing up in more searches. So for all of you right now, if you look at your headline and if you just have like founder or CEO, well, most people probably aren't just looking for just that. They're probably looking for what you solve for. And in this instance, we take B2B influence and turn it to pipeline. And that's what people are looking for is like, all right, I have influence, I have expertise, but how do I turn that into actual sales? So if all of you are like, what's the formula? Here's the formula. What are you doing in your area of expertise? And you can put it twice or you can put it once. But this is the main formula that I recommend people to follow. Because what you're looking to do is state, what are you actually doing in the market so that people can come and find you? So when you're doing your messaging, people are like, that makes sense. Or again, they find you via inbound, which is the goal. So either or, but we want to make sure that that headline is extremely clear, because if we are reaching out and they don't know what we're about, then the likelihood of them responding is going to be extremely low. So again, before we start talking about messaging and reaching out to people and all this different stuff, you need to make sure that this is here. Because if you just have founder, like there's a lot of founders, right? But what are you doing to actually speak to that ideal buyer, avatar, ideal customer profile, however you want to label that? We got to figure that out. So that's why this right here will get you in the right motion. Again, I'll go back here. If you want to use it as a visual and you're like, Morgan, I just want to take what you have, great, you can literally just take this. But the goal, again, as you're going to see pretty consistently, be brief, be brilliant, be gone. Talk to me.
Is there a limit to the characters? I know there were some issues with.
Oh, you're trying to go crazy with me. You're going the opposite of be brief, be brilliant, be gone. You're trying to, what are you doing here? What's going on? No, I'm kidding. What are you going to ask?
Yeah, I mean, just like what's the max characters it should be? I mean, obviously, you want people brief.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty confident they've been changing a lot of things on the LinkedIn platform, but I believe 180 is how much you have characters. You have. I typically suggest, I can see if I have an example here, is these are just like the 2 bracket. Oh, this is a 1 bracket, but you also have a 2 bracket. So some people will be like, they'll put this here, and then they'll put like what industries they work with, and then they'll put the CEO of whatever. So it just depends on how much you want to put. I'd recommend is like, put a lot of Google Doc, write out all the things of like, here's what we solve for, here are the pain points of our buyers, here's some accolades I have, and then look at it and figure out like which ones actually mesh together. You obviously can use AI for that too if you want, but just kind of start writing it out and be like, okay, which headline like really would stand out here. That would be my recommendation. And it's okay to A/B test this. I look at mine every 75 to 90 days, and I see like what my search is like. Like, is it higher? Is it lower? Am I getting more profile views? And then if I don't like that, I'll make slight tweaks along the way. Does it help answer the question?
Yeah.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions on the profile before we move on to the next thing? Okay, cool. So when you're doing outbound or you're looking to sell, these are the 5 things on LinkedIn that you need to look for. You can look other places if you want, but these are just the 5 you should focus on. So one is profile views. This is my favorite thing that LinkedIn has. There is no other social platform that has profile views. I think if the other platforms had it, it'd probably be problematic for a lot of people, but this is the only one that has it. So I recommend at the end of every single week for you to check your profile views. And then I'll show you how to do that a very easy way here in a minute. But profile views is a fantastic signal that there is legit interest there, most likely. Now, someone could slip up and look at your profile, but again, there are a billion profiles on LinkedIn. So if someone clicked on your profile to view it, there's probably some level of interest there. So we need to capitalize on that. And some people have questions on this being like, whoa, if they view my profile and they didn't message me, then like they probably weren't interested. I'm like, imagine your day. Like, we all probably have, looked at someone's profile, we probably wanted to say something, and then you got pulled into a fire, you got pulled into something else, and you just completely forgot. So that same thing is probably happening when people view your profile. There are potential opportunities you could be missing out on right now if you looked at your profile views of potential clients. And I've had that happen to me. I reached out to someone, and they were like, oh yeah, it was on your profile, got roped into something. I wanted to talk to you about X. That led into a closed deal. And we'll talk about the messaging there in order for you to do that. 2 is connection requests. So these are connection requests that are coming inbound, right? And these are also connection requests that are going outbound. My recommendation is on LinkedIn to connect with 10 to 15 new people per day if you can. Now, why are you doing that? Every single person that you connect with on LinkedIn and they accept you and you message them, which we'll talk about messaging here in a minute, will see you on the top of their feed. It's very similar if you go on really any platform. If you go on like Instagram, for example, and you follow someone, you'll notice that in the next couple hours, if you go back on there, that person's content you'll see first to see if you like it or not. And that's how the algorithm tests to see if that's within your ICP, and then you build off top of that. So the way to really grow content and also to grow your pipeline is to connect with people that are within your space. Also, the benefit of doing the outbound connection request is it builds your mutual connections with someone. Right? So the goal is to create familiarity within the industry. So if I reach out to someone I'm trying to get in front of, the VP of IT or the CIO or the VP of sales or whatever personas you go after, and I send them a connection request and there's 50 mutual connections, but the other person that's selling in my same industry has 5 mutual connections with the person who has 50 mutual connections is going to get the acceptance. The person with 5 probably won't. So that's why we're doing this outbound connection request to build our network within this industry. So people are like, whoa, if this person has 75 mutual connections, I probably should know this person. That's the network of familiarity. That's why we're doing that. So the third one is target company page posts. This is, I believe, one of the most underrated techniques. You don't have to do this every single day, but there are probably right now, all of you have target companies that you're trying to go after. You probably have your top 50, top 100, top 200. Every single person has it probably in this room. You know what companies you want to work with. One of the key benefits is finding posts on the company page that you can interact and comment with. And if you do that, guess what? There's nobody there. It's like a ghost town. You're laughing because you go to a company page, like they have like 2 comments, 3 comments. So if you come in there and actually comment something intelligent, right, insightful, they will engage with you. Now, if you take this advice and comment on a company page and say, great post, that's not what I'm talking about. Do not do that. That is the quickest way to not get the deal. So if you want negative pipeline, do that. But if you want actual pipeline, there's a formula on how to actually comment. So it's insight, question. And I'll explain what that means. So let's say you go to a company page and they talk about some product update that they have. Again, at random that I'm talking about. And you say, hey, here's something I learned about your product update that I just read about, whatever. And then ask a question and say, How is that going to look to serve in the market? Or how did you come to this conclusion? I'm making things up. But the whole thing is you want to go insight, question. You want to do that for every single comment, which actually leads it to number 4. Target personas that are posting. Now, quick show of hands. How many of you have Sales Navigator? So I'll call people. Okay, so I'm going to give advice for people who have Sales Navigator. And if you don't have Sales Navigator, I still got you. So I just want to give context in the room. So if you have Sales Nav, inside of Sales Nav, there is a filter called Posted on LinkedIn. So what that filter does is it tells you in the past 90 days who is posted on LinkedIn. Why is that important? Because there are people in accounts that you're looking to get in front of where the executive has made a post, and again, they have 100 likes and 1 comment. Why? Because most people are afraid to comment on an executive's post and say something silly or dumb. So that's why I don't do it. It's easy to like and just move on. So what are you going to do? What you're going to do is proactively find those people in those accounts, and you're going to comment something insightful based on the framework I just told you, lead with an insight, and ask a question. Now, within that, you also have to make sure not to be creepy. What do I mean by that? Don't go to a post 3 years ago and leave a comment, okay? That's probably not gonna work and it's not gonna be relevant, so don't go that route. I recommend within a 6-month window to leave a comment on the executive's post. If it's beyond that, I'd recommend not to do it unless it's extremely relevant and you can point to something that maybe it's happening in real time, but the likelihood of that happening is extremely low. So again, if it's 3 or 4 years ago, please do not comment on there. Just don't do it. Within the 6 months is what we're looking for to comment and engage and actually start that conversation. And then the last one is your own post. And we're going to talk about this, but start putting out your own content. Now we're going to talk about the flow of that's going to look like, but this also will lead to your own inbound engine and also give you insights on what the market's looking for. But if you're just starting out, number 1 and number 4 are probably the best things for you to do on top of 2. So probably if you're taking notes, 1, 2, and 4, those are the best things to start with. And then you can start moving towards 3 and 5. End goal is for you to be at 5. But again, 1, 2, and 4 are like the main focuses that you really want to have. Now within that, let's get into how to actually send connection requests. The first 2, I'm going to explain in detail in a minute, but the last one is the most important that I'm going to explain. And I'm still surprised by this data, but this is just what I'm seeing until it changes. So what we've seen is if you send a blank connection request, that means there's no note, there's no anything, this has the highest acceptance rate. Now, in order to have that high acceptance rate, you do need to have a good profile picture and a good headline, which is why we just talked about it. But if you have both of those, you will see an increase in acceptance rates from your connection requests if they're blank. Now, also, this is where people get a little crazy because they hear this information. They're like, oh, great, I don't have to personalize. I can just go crazy. Please be mindful, all right? You have a limitation on how many connection requests you can send. You can only send 150 per week. So also, they check the velocity and the speed of how you do them. So if you are like, get really excited at this workshop and you're like, I want to go send a lot of connection requests, for whatever reason, if you do it too fast, LinkedIn will be like, hey, you need to stop. And if you keep doing it, you'll put in LinkedIn jail, which eventually will get you kicked out of LinkedIn. So you hear this advice, great, slow it down. That's why I say 10 to 15 per day so that you don't get hit up against that limit. Because if you get hit up against that limit, they're going to come back and be like, what's going on? And that's not what we want. So blank note, that's exactly what you want to do there. The other 2 I'll explain. So give on content. This is like for everybody in the room. You probably have a piece of content, a white paper or a webinar or whatever, and you want to lead with this in terms of personalized requests. And I'll explain when to do the personalized requests because again, it's a little counterintuitive to what I just said, but I'll explain that here in a minute. When you give on content, this is saying, hey, we got an asset that our buyer persona really likes. Do you want to see the replay? Do you want to download the resource? Right? So it could be a webinar, it could be a white paper, it could be an ebook. Whatever resource you have, this is basically you telling them, I have an asset, they accept the connection request, you send it to them, and then now you have reason to follow up within the next month, because once they read the resources or they watch the thing, then you tell them what to do from there. Contextual point here, if you're taking notes and you have webinars that you do, or maybe you have a show or things of that nature, give them timestamps on where to go. give them timestamps on where to go. So let me explain that. Let's say you have an hour webinar. So for most of you in this room, I would say, hey, go check out this hour webinar. Or you probably have friends say, go check out this hour-long YouTube. You're like, I'm probably not going to do that. It's not happening. But if your friend was like, hey, this is an hour-long YouTube video, go to minute 21:40. This is where they talk about X. What happens is once you watch minute 21:40 and you find that insightful, psychologically and based on the data, you'll end up watching the whole thing. So we have to tell people where to go at first, get them bought in. Once they're bought in, they'll watch the whole entire thing. So for you all, it's figuring out if you have these content pieces or webinars or ebooks or whatever, you need to tell them where to go. It's the same thing with ebook. If you give someone a 40-page ebook, how many of you in the past year have read a 40-page ebook? Okay, so a couple people. You don't have to be ashamed, I'm just asking, right? So the thing is, like, the majority of people didn't raise their hand, right? And so what we want to do is we want to lead with that insight and say, hey, page 8, this is directly for you as a director of IT, and here's why you should check that out. They're going to read page 8, and they're going to read the rest. So we always want to contextualize the information we give people so it gives them a really good start and they're excited, and then they'll be excited to read the rest because if they really like that part, they'll consume the rest. And so that's what we want to do there. The direct note, this one's extremely interesting. And as founders, you could be extremely direct with this, and you're not a sales rep, so it's easier to do this. What we're saying here is this is what we solve for, and if you accept, I'm going to pitch you. So this isn't, I'm not trying to like hide behind something. This is directly telling you if you accept this, like I am going to send you a pitch. And the reason that this works is it has a higher conversion rate. So the blank note has the highest connection acceptance rate, but this direct note has the highest conversion rate to a meeting. So I've seen a 35% conversion rate to a meeting when this note gets sent. Now, it only has a 15 to 18% connection to acceptance rate, but also this is so upfront that I know if they accept it, I now have the right to pitch here. And if they don't respond, then it is what it is. But the reason you're connected with someone, let's be honest, is you're looking to probably sell them something at some point. So that's why we're connecting. So that's why I'm sending this to people that I definitely want to get in front of as well. Talk to me.
What about laddering up? What about sending a blank note, they accept, you want to get into that network, and then within a time span, then go direct note?
So that's a great point. You can 100% do that. You can 100% do that. So his question was, if y'all didn't hear that one, can we send the blank note, they accept, and ladder up with these? You can 100% do that. These are just different options to get in, but you can use this messaging after they accept the blank connection request. We'll show you other examples of how to also break through the noise, but you can 100% do that as well. Were you raising your hand? Okay, cool. You were like, I don't know if you were.
No, I'm doing the other way around. I don't believe in this. I hate everything what is, if I receive any of these, I'm like, hey.
You're done.
I'm number 6 million.
Okay.
You know, I always usually look for some kind of presentation they have.
Okay.
And everybody who was in the presentation, they made a presentation.
Okay.
I write them, hey, I love your presentation. It was insightful. Let's connect. I want to discuss the topic. They take it from there.
What if they don't have a presentation?
Usually my customers do.
What if they don't?
If they don't, then for me it's more important to connect on that level that we can share something.
Yeah, for sure.
Than to kill the market.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So the thing is, your point is 100% spot on. These are examples if we can't find anything. So there are also some people in the room where you can't find anything about them. They have no posts, they have no interviews, they have no webinars, these have zero. We can't do anything. So these are things where it's like you have absolutely nowhere to go. So we have to make some type of effort to build. And so these are examples. But the thing is, if you already have examples that work for you, fantastic, do your thing. But yeah, exactly. But these are like, hey, what if we have none of that information? So then we have to take certain steps in order to get in front of those people. So I appreciate you calling that out. Anyone else have questions on this before we move forward? Yeah, talk to me.
I feel that, I've been thinking about how I sell to C-level executives. And
Like what kind? Like
operations and HR, learning and development.
okay, cool.
So always throughout my career, there has been this element of building connections, doing these,
Of course.
to kind of sell. But I came across last week to this post, and this guy was saying they don't have time to to build connections, do these,
Yep.
why don't you just go straight for the actual value that you can provide? And instead of these, because they will appreciate that, because as a VC executive, you don't have time to do this. But
Yep.
if you can find a solution that actually solves your pain point,
Yeah.
you have done your work.
So are you saying more so being even more direct with your messaging to C-suites? Is that what you're saying
I
there?
think exactly depends
Yeah.
on your target.
Of course.
So like, I just thought that something, obviously, if you're selling to middle level, then there's this kind of building of connection. But
Yep.
if you're going to the top, why waste their time?
Yep.
Just go straight.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why the direct note works so well. And then also as well, that's why I think a lot of people are like, well, if I am reaching out to someone, I have to do the rapport building and the messaging. And I'm like, just find something relevant and just reach out to that person, right? Because they're not going to want the back and forth because they already know where that's going. We know where that's going to go as the end result. So I think that's a good call out as well. Anyone have any other comments? Yep.
I found that there's value in just getting the connection. Because once you're connected, then they're seeing you show up in their feed.
Correct.
You can message them anytime you want through an alternate inbox. And if you do this 10 to 15 requests a day, you have a pretty massive network that's all focused in your industry. After a year, you're connected to everybody, right? So there's also some value in just getting the connection requests. So for what it's worth.
No, I agree 100%. So,
But then you lose them, and then there's a big problem, right? Once I keep asking them to connect, they don't accept me. I lost them. And that's what we much higher than lost.
Well, yeah, but you can also just retract after. There's tools that you can use to automatically retract connection requests and then try it again in 6 months. So you can keep.
How are you going to look like? You like try 3 times with the VP of sales.
He's not going to remember you over the span of 18 months. I mean, he might. But either way, if you don't ever get a connection request, you never would have got it anyway. So
yeah.
You've nothing to lose.
You really don't.
You don't have to sell anyway, so
Yeah.
trying again is not gonna hurt you.
Yeah, I agree.
I was gonna say something that people don't do that I found really helpful is if I don't get that request, then I'll go to somebody that knows them to ask for that introduction as well. People seem to forget that.
Yep.
In terms of, people already know that connection. When we just don't do it as an individual.
100%. What's your name?
Me, Jared.
Jared. So he just brought up an excellent point that's actually going right into my point here, which is withdrawing these connection requests. So there's a play here that's extremely important. So as he mentioned, it's like, will they remember you? So if you cold call somebody, cold email them, as long as it's not absurd, they will not remember you. They will forget you in like 2 seconds. And also as well, the fold here, I just show this as an example. You only have 3 to 6 connections that come above the fold. So once they see this, they'll see it for like a couple seconds and they will just move on and they will not remember you. Just so everybody knows, like it's not like everyone's not like analyzing each person and be like, they will not remember you after 3 seconds. And I've tested this a lot where I've sent someone a connection request, they didn't accept me, and I'm about to explain this. I withdrawed it. I came back 3 weeks later. I sent a message. I got a meeting, led to a closed deal. They didn't even remember the first one I even sent. So the thing is, people are moving so fast, they're not going to remember any of these things, which is why we take this step. So you'll see right here, when you send a connection request, we're looking to withdraw, right? So what we're doing here is we're withdrawing the connection request so that ultimately we can send one at a later date, right? So typically when I withdraw, it'll be like three weeks. You got to wait. And then after that 3 weeks, then you'll be looking to reach out, which would be the key. Huh? Did they change it?
Yeah, I just did this last week.
Oh, they might have just changed it.
But then when I went to
Okay, maybe they just changed it. Yeah, so 3, 6 weeks, but you want to withdraw, and then you can come back, and then you can reach out later, right? That's the gist. That's what you want to focus on there. So any messaging that you have, this is where you then start getting that momentum. And then this leads into what we're going to talk about, which is the messaging of this. Now, when I break this down, this is the framework on how you can convert opportunities on LinkedIn to build your pipeline. Now, I'm going to show you unique ways of how to do that through voice notes or videos or what have you. But also, you can use this as written text as well if you want to, right? It's a kind of an either or situation. So when you're sending out anything on LinkedIn, I'm going to talk about videos because we just talked about it a little bit here. I'm also going to talk about voice notes as well. But when we're looking to reach out to somebody, this is the straightforward formula we can follow. And this formula, you'll notice when I go over the email, is the same exact thing, which is the 10-30-10 formula. And basically all this means is how do we, in less than 50 seconds, convey our message with video or voice? But also, how do we just convey our message in general with the emails that we're sending out? And again, it follows this framework. The first part is you're going to state the reason. So you're going to say, what is the reason on why you're reaching out? So maybe like, all right, the reason for my video or the reason for my voice note. The point of this is psychologically when people hear the reason for something, they are more bought in to listen to you for the next however many seconds. So based on how it works is if I send a video to someone and I say, here's the reason for the video, you've now bought yourself another 37 seconds. So basically the first 3 seconds, if they're bought in, they'll watch the next 37 seconds, which is why it kind of comes up with the 10-30-10. But the premise here is when you state the reason for it, people crave reasons and they're more bought in to hear what you have to say. So I always encourage people, if you're sending a video or a voice note, even an email, you don't want to say, hey, my name is so-and-so, I do that, like nobody cares. You just want to get straight to the reason on like why you're actually reaching out to this person. Again, be brief, be brilliant, be gone, exactly what I just talked about. Now, once we get past this point, the next thing is the value prop. Value prop's pretty straightforward. What do you offer? What is your service? What is your product? Whatever it may be. What are you actually offering to this person? Now, it could be different based on if you have multiple products or things of that nature, but typically you want that pitch to be about 20 to 30 seconds, and it's based on the reason of why you're reaching out. So if you would put this together, you would say, okay, the reason for my video is I was on your website and I noticed that you were hiring product managers and I saw that in the responsibilities. The main reason why we're reaching out to you is because when we see you're hiring product managers, here's why. And then it leads into the value prop of why that's important. So you always want to state a reason of what you found. You just don't want to say, the reason for my video is I want to book a meeting. Like, you don't want to do that. You want to actually lead into an actual legitimate value prop. Then the last point is the call to action. So what do you actually want them to do? Now, there could be all different types of ways on how you can do this. Based on data, what we've seen is when you're actually looking to go to a call to action, you want to do an interest call to action rather than a direct one. And I'll explain what that means. So when you do like a direct call to action, you're asking for 30 minutes, well, then that's someone's time. They're more likely actually to push back on you and be like, yeah, I don't really want to hear all that. But if we do an interest one, then that would be like, are you open to learning more? Are you curious to have a deeper dialogue on this topic? How are you currently addressing this today with your team? How are you currently approaching this internally? I'm giving you high-level examples, but that call to action actually leads to more responses, which then that response leads into the meeting that we're actually looking for. So again, I always encourage people to do interest call to actions. Again, you see an example here, rather than direct call to actions. Because again, what we want to do is create frictionless call to actions so it's easier for people to respond. You create friction when you ask for 30 minutes because then they're like, all right, I don't have time for that or whatever it may be. So in every single message, we follow this 10-30-10 framework. Now we're going to go to actually, how does this actually work so you can see it. So everyone in this room might not be a huge fan of this. All right, I'm going to say this immediately because some people don't like doing this, which is fine. But I'm just giving you different ways to stand out right now that I've just seen work from other people. So on LinkedIn, if you did not know, on your phone, to first-degree connected people, you can send a voice message. Now, the reason I say this is because most people don't get this. So we just talked about earlier, breaking through the noise. This is a way of doing this. If you're a video person, you can also do the same, and we can also talk about that as well. But again, I've tested this myself in the past 6 months. So you see, I did it in a 4-week time span, but I wanted to see if this continuously still worked. So I sent out 125 voice messages, and then you see the math, 50 responses, 25 meetings, which is around like a 40% response rate and a 20% meeting efficiency rate, which is like not that bad, considering the email response rates are 2 to 4%. So I'll take that. But the goal here, especially in the early stages of the founder, is that this is a really good way to test telling your story, being articulate, being brief. They can actually hear what you're about. This is probably one of the best ways to do it because you are the lead salesperson in this regard, and people want to hear what you're about. So let's go over some like examples of what this looks like. So I always show this, and I sent this a while ago. Like this is one of the first ones I sent, but I always show this to tell people when you do things like this, it stands out because people haven't seen it. And you'll see in the response here that this was the first time he had actually gotten something like this. So the goal in building pipeline, selling to a degree is what are things that you can do that no one has seen before so they don't see you in the same pattern? And how can we slightly break through the noise and do something unique that most people just probably haven't seen? Talk to me.
Do you find a difference in response rate between video and voice chat, or is they kind of interchangeable?
I would say video is a little bit higher, and I would definitely, for probably most people in this room, it would be higher because they'll be able to, they can see you, body language, they feel the energy differently. So I saw a slight increase on the video side, but for most people, they hesitate to do the video because it's fully them. You got to get ready for it, right? And then also as well, you may be afraid to just do it as a whole. So that's why I always recommend, if you don't want to do the video, that's completely fine. You can do the voice note. If you don't want to do the voice note, you can just follow the formula and still do it in the text base. But you'll see higher conversion with the video. But also here's the most important part, is people that you schedule with a video have a faster sales cycle. So let's say your average sales cycle is 75 days. Well, for most organizations I've worked with, when someone really took ownership of this, they saw that 75 sales cycle, it went down to like 45, 50. Because you built so much trust in the beginning with that video, now they have like that connective tissue with you, and it actually allowed for the deal to go a lot faster. So that's probably the more interesting point of this is like, yes, you'll have a higher response, but your sales cycle will go faster because now they see you immediately and they're like, okay, I have some familiarity with this person, and now it actually moves faster on that end. You got a question? Look deep in thought.
Oh, I'm just thinking about like using video because it works so well on email. You probably work on LinkedIn. I didn't know that was an option, so definitely try it.
You'll actually, so on email, video has like an 18, 20% response rate, but then on like LinkedIn, it's like 45. But I'll break down actually why that's the case. So on LinkedIn, this is a silly rule. I don't even know why they have this. So you can only have 30,000 connections on LinkedIn. And again, you can only send it to first degree connections, which means that you have a 1 in 30,000 chance of getting a response versus a 1 in bajillion chance with email. Because anybody can send an email. Not many people can send a LinkedIn video because only first degree connected. Plus, the likelihood of them having 30,000 is also highly unlikely. They probably only have 5 to 10,000. So that chances of response is higher because if you have a video and you're first degree connected with them, not a lot of people have that opportunity. So also as well with the video, and I'll show it here in a minute, the videos are native to the platform. So I don't use like a Vidyard or BombBomb, which all of these are video softwares you can use. I don't use that. I just use my phone. So again, we talked about it earlier, I'm removing friction from all points of building pipeline and selling. I want there to be next to no friction. When there's friction, it's not going to work. All of us in this room, as founders, you know, you're busy as is. Like the last thing you want to do is an extra step. You're just going to leave and dip. So that's why the native video has a higher conversion rate because I send it native to the platform and all I have to do is click it and watch. And they don't have to go an extra step.
Morgan, I went back and looked at my LinkedIn feed about how I first met you. And you sent me a video.
I sent Greg a video.
You sent me a video, and then I didn't respond. And then 5 days later, you said, any feedback on my video? And first of all, you didn't know that this was going to convert into free work, what you were doing. So, jokes on you.
Worked out well.
But thanks for everything. You know, I was wondering about just how do you, for someone like you that's got such a big following, and you're so disciplined that like the execution of this methodology, how do you manage all of it? Are you using other tools like how did you drip on me 5 days later as an example? Like, are you just going back in your LinkedIn feed? Are you using, like, I'm not sure what other tools there are. I'm not in your CRM or anything like that. So how do you manage the cadence of when to follow up when someone doesn't respond?
Yeah, no, this is actually a fantastic question. So yes, I did send Greg a video. Also did a follow-up, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. So everything I talk about, again, is in real time. So there's two ways of doing it. So I'll talk to the Sales Nav crew first, and then we'll talk to everybody else. So within Sales Nav, you can create lists and actually track engagement. It is the only way to truly track engagement, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So I was like playing around in Sales Nav, and I was trying to figure some things out, and I didn't really know how to track this because people kept asking me. So I made this super clean, and essentially, if you go in here, again, if you're a Sales Nav user, see if I can zoom in real quick. So you'll see right here on, yeah, there it is, on outreach activity. So notice how it tells me everything that's going on. So I add people to a list. So right now it's called like AMP 2025. So these are all the people that I'm currently reaching out to. And I can keep tabs on everyone because it tells me when the last message that I sent. So this is how I keep all myself and hold myself accountable. So to explain what this is, again, if you're a Sales Nav user, and then we'll talk about it if you don't have it. So this gray means I sent the message, but no one responded. But again, it tells me the last time that I sent it. This, I guess, blue, turquoise, whatever color you would call it, means they received the message and they have responded to it. So I can go in here, for example, and look at all the different pieces I have. Now, obviously, you see like 10 hours ago, someone responded, so I have no idea what that is now, so I gotta go check it in a minute. But like, you'll see that I can see when responses have happened, invitations have been accepted, and also I can see if I need to follow up. So this says 6 years ago, but if it said like 4 days ago, I know I need to go back and follow up. Because the way that I do it is I send a LinkedIn message if it's a sales message, and then I follow up 3 to 5 days after. And the reason I do that is because I want to give some time, because I know the inbox can be crazy. And then I follow up appropriately because I know people are busy. And then as Greg says, I ask for feedback because people like to get feedback psychologically. If I say, bubble us back up to the top, any updates, those are things that annoy people. Or, did you see my email? Like, they probably saw it and didn't care. So like, there's no reason to bring up negative things again. So I'm only looking to bring up positive things, which is feedback. Could be positive, also could be negative, but it most likely will probably be positive. So that's why I ask for feedback on that. Yeah, go ahead.
Follow-up question. So using Sales Nav, do you have a structured time? Like this 30-minute block every day, you're coming back in, creating this list to go back and look, and you've got your triggers you're looking for.
Yep. So in terms of just looking at the list to follow up, just in general?
But you're not getting like notified, these are the list of 100, these 25
Yep.
haven't responded to a message you sent 5 days, 4 days.
Yeah, so what I do is, and I suggest this for everybody if you can, right? And I know everybody's in different stages of where they're at in the business. But what I do is I block off 45 minutes, an hour if you can in the morning. And it's just like my hour of like pipeline building. Because I know like if I don't do this, then like the business won't be there. So the thing is like, this is absolutely important. We need pipeline to close stuff. So I will look in that 45 time block. First thing I go to is that to say, do I need to follow up on anyone? And then if I don't, then I'll go with my normal procedures. If you do, I recommend 5 to 10 personalized messages a day. Let's just say you did 5. It's not even, I'm not asking for a whole lot, 5. So if you did the math on that, that's 100 messages per month. That's 25 messages per week. And so if I do 100 of those messages a month and I have, let's say, a 10% conversion rate, that's 10 meetings. That's pretty good. So I think of things as like small consistencies rather than, okay, I'm gonna do 100 messages today. Now, if you feel that way, go ahead and do it. But that small piece of breakdown that I just gave you actually makes it a lot easier as a founder to go and execute that. Because I at least have time to do 5 messages that are personalized to somebody at the minimum. And that compounds over time, right? Because that's 1,200 messages for the year that most people just won't even do, right? And so that's what I do. In that time block, 45 minutes to an hour, I'm looking in the morning, say, okay, who do I need to follow up with? And that's a simple message. Like you can short key that. Any feedback on my video, any feedback on my voice note. You put the first name, you move on, and then you get the response. Did that help answer your question? There, I know you had a hand raised, and we'll go to you.
Yeah, so kind of a question around something that I'm seeing, right? So I've been kind of back and forth a little bit between Sales Navigator and just LinkedIn. And it seems to me, and I'm curious what you're thinking, that you kind of have to just commit to one. If you have Sales Navigator, probably that one.
Yeah.
Just for one simple reason is messages, and I want to make sure that I'm seeing this right. Messages that I see in Sales Navigator, if I initiate that through Sales Navigator, I don't see in my regular LinkedIn box.
Yep.
Vice versa.
Yes.
So, and it's been frustrating, right? And it's actually pushed me to just regular LinkedIn because I live there so long.
Yep.
So I'm just curious, do you have to commit to one? I think you do, and should it be Navigator?
Yeah. So look, another terrible thing that LinkedIn, I told them all these things. I was like, why do you have two inboxes? It's just dumb. So it's the dumbest thing ever. So the thing is, I would do no messaging through Sales Navigator. I just wouldn't even do it. The only thing I use Sales Nav for is to gather insights. So my regular LinkedIn messaging is good. So you can use them as a dual function. I just don't recommend you sending messages through Sales Nav. That's where you're going to run into a lot of obstacles. And I also, the follow-up is, if you find that you're not finding a lot of utility with Sales Nav, because it does cost a good bit. So if you're not finding you find utility, there are different search functions you can use through the regular LinkedIn and still be okay. But to answer your question, LinkedIn Messenger beats out everything else Sales Nav Messenger is going to do, because if you aren't looking at your own inbox, no one else is looking at the inbox either. So I see it as a black hole, to be fair. Like I tell people, last ditch effort, if you're really trying to get in front of someone, sure, send an email, but don't hold your breath.
So create the lead list in Navigator.
Correct.
But do everything else pretty much in LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That
like
makes
if we were
sense.
to,
I hadn't thought about that.
no, you're good. So when it comes back up, you'll see like in the outreach activity, that actually accounts for the regular LinkedIn messaging. So, okay, it came back up. So this is not, I'm not messaging any of these people in Sales Nav, to be clear. This is all through regular LinkedIn. So it's tracking into Sales Nav. I'm just using this as a repository of follow-up for my own self. And so it just makes it a lot easier. But I'm not doing any messaging in InMail unless it's like, I have to do it. And we'll talk about it later, but basically you just take your personalized emails and just throw it in InMail. And like, let's see if they respond. I would not put a lot of effort into this at all.
I wish I hadn't filled the deal with these guys, but I'm gonna give you guys the tool to blow your first device. I have it up right now. I use it every day, but it automates all this stuff, and it brings it all out of LinkedIn. Gives you the ability to build an entire drip campaign. So if you want to time something 3 days after you send this message, if they responded, then you take them out of the drip campaign. You can automate things like doing their profile. You just show up on that list. You can automate that stuff. You build your searches on Sales Navigator. It gives you a link. You pop that link into the tool, and then it will just start every day. Send out 15 connection requests, whatever you're looking for. And it'll automate all the other steps. You'll even guest emails. You can slide into email campaigns at that point. It's really it's like $100 a month per user. You guys want to know what to do? Just go ahead. By the way, all these tools that automate LinkedIn are all under the radar because LinkedIn's always trying to shut them down. Right? It's called the app.rebelleads.io. Rebel, there's two L's in the middle there, rebelleads.io. And I send about 15 connection requests to chief medical officers every day, and I have automation.
Awesome.
You can use tokens, you can use the first name, and stuff like that.
So continue on here. These are just, again, other examples. You'll see the feedback. Again, this is something that I continuously tell people about. You'll see you can use that there. And then video messages. I'm not going to go over the whole spill. You already know what this means. Here's the breakdown in data. And the thing is this is just how the videos look. Again, like I said, they're native to the actual platform. So I'm making these on an iPhone and I'm sending them out. Talk to me.
Is your like script for this the same, like 10, 30, 10?
Same thing. Everything's the same. The only thing is I'm just on video now. Yep, that's it. It's the same thing. And then I have like a little descriptor here. Hey, this is what it's about. But again, nothing crazy here. It's straightforward. Here's examples from other people doing the same exact thing. And then again, another example. And then another example here. So one of the things you'll see here as well, I always tell people, is make sure that you smile and you don't look crazy, right? You don't want to look sad and look like you're a hostage. So the whole thing is like you want to smile, look approachable, like people actually want to talk to you. So that's one of the key things here on video. But again, I've already explained it on the voice note. It's pretty straightforward. Now, here's some other things. Again, text-wise, if you want to send out some stuff as well. Again, I'm giving you just examples of what I've seen to work. Use it, don't use it. But here's some other things that you can use on LinkedIn to get ahead as well. And again, a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing, again, you can use across the board in different ways. But the goal here is that when you're using this messaging to find out what lands with you, is it the voice notes? Is it the videos? Is it text? Again, I have no idea. Whatever you decide works with you, that's going to be the key. And then we go from there. So I already talked about this. Kind of was diving into a little bit. If you use SalesNav, I know a lot of people don't use it in this room. So again, I'm just showing you high level and we'll move quick. If you use SalesNav, these are the 5 filters I'd focus on. So this is how I leverage it. Profile viewed recently, following your company, seniority level. Again, these are just filters I'd recommend to use. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because most people in the room don't use it. But as you see, here's an example of how you can go execute. I also would say as well, mix and match with these. Profile viewed recently, seniority level. That's a great way to see who's viewed your profile, that's your decision makers that you actually care about. That's like a prime example. So that's another thing you can look at as well. So here's just my overall playbook. I add the GIF for GIF because some people like it. Some people don't at all. It depends on your persona. I understand that. But this is basically how I go about getting in front of that potential buyer. Again, this flow can be modified and adjusted to however you want it to be. But I found that this flow is very applicable to get in front of the people you're trying to get in front of, right? And again, I'm not doing a whole lot here, but I'm keeping it very consistent in how I do it. And I know we just talked about tracking. If you're not using a sales nav, you can also, in your CRM, you can label these as tasks and follow up with people. You can also use a super innovative Google spreadsheet if you want to, but there are all different types of ways on how to do this. Spreadsheet, CRM, I would say those are the main 2 ways. If you're trying to track it, there's another doing it as well. But again, that's just an example I would give. So I'm going to bring this up real quick because what I do believe is important as we go into like the email side is understanding what are the pillars you should be creating content with. I always tell people if you're like, hey, I want to create content, I want to get started, you need to focus on 3 revenue pillars. So these are 3 pillars that you would use to create your content. So these are like my 3. I talk about how to generate pipeline, expertise in revenue. So again, we help with founders and executives to create content that leads into revenue. And then I'm talking about how I'm scaling a creator-led business right now. So these are like the 3 pillars that then lead into our services or opportunities or whatever that is. So again, for you all, think about it. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to know the answer right now. But what are the 3 pillars right now that you would use to create content that your potential buyers would be interested in to get in front of them? That's essentially what we're looking to do here. So these are 3 pillars that you could focus on, and that's why we want to create content. And then I always bring these 2 up are like your personal interests. Now, this comes later in the game. These are just things that are personal to you that will help you stand out as you do the 3 revenue pillars. This is the most important thing is these revenue pillars because, again, this leads into the inbound, all the stuff that you want. And then we also, again, have these 2 personal interests that help you stand out as the founder and what people actually relate you towards. So that's why these 5 pillars of content is what you want to focus on when you create content. It allows you to be consistent, allows you to focus. You're not going to be all over the place, and you know exactly what to talk about so then people can consume that content and be like, okay, that's interesting. Very quick examples because I want to get to the email stuff from a time perspective. You good? I saw you taking a screenshot. You good? Okay, cool. So these are questions to ask when you want to start creating content. All right, you can take a screenshot of this and answer them later. You don't have to answer them now. But if you're in the room and you're like, hey, I want to start creating content, I feel like that's a way for me to get in front of my market, these are the questions you want to start asking yourself. Based on these answers, you'll then get a good understanding of how to start creating content. And so, more so with anything, it's not, here's an answer. It's the questions I give you to find the answer that's best for you. And these questions over thousands of hundreds of thousands of posts that I've done and analyzed, I found that these questions actually help you the best to create the content that's going to help you get in front of the people you want to get in front of. And we talked about this already, but again, with LinkedIn, again, you're going to see how this all plays together at the end. As you're building the pipeline and getting in front of people, this is how you're omnipresent. So every action I'm about to tell you after makes your life a lot easier. Now, some of your buyers may be as active on LinkedIn, which I understand, but for most people, from what I've seen, they are active and they are lurking, and they are paying attention. So these steps are what we want to take to get in front of those people. And when I say 30 high quality people, that means 30 people in your industry that people follow or engage with that are considered the thought leaders or whatever they may be. We want to create a list of that so we can engage with them and get in front of them accordingly. This is another screenshot. When you're looking to create posts, I put this up as this is a way that you can start thinking about how to actually create the post. This is a very simple and straightforward formula. When you create a post, you want to address the problem. You want to agitate on why that problem, if it continues to exist, why it would be an issue. And then you provide the solution of what that actually would be. And obviously, at the end of the day, the solve is what you offer and why you started the company in the first place. So PSA, very straightforward. When I tell people about creating content, try not to make it super overwhelming. It's like, follow this formula. When you write your post, think about it this way. It actually helps you, in correlation, build that pipeline or go where you need to go, right? Which is the whole cornerstone and key of what we're looking to do here. So I'm going to pause before we get into the email portion. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns on the LinkedIn side before we transition into email? Cool.
This is phenomenal, Morgan. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, everybody's good. So now what we're going to do is get into the email side. Now, when I talk about standing out in the inbox, these are the three things you need to focus on. Because when people write an email, they'll just tell you, be personalized and provide value, but what does that even mean, right? This is how you actually look at every single email and systematically approach it, and how you can even automate these steps as well. So again, these are the three things. In every single email that you look at that gets responses, these three things occur to make it relevant after all the ones I've analyzed. One is the company. What does that mean? You do research on the company and you find something that's going on that is unique to them. I don't have to explain it. It explains it all here, but basically that's what you're looking for. The best place to find that, press release, AI can even tell you, to be honest, but all these things in the background will tell you exactly what you need to be doing and how to go about it. So again, on the company side, you're looking at what are the news and the insights from that company that I can leverage to reach out to the person. The next is the persona. So the persona is whatever persona you go after, VP of IT, Director of Sales, VP of Marketing, whatever. What are their challenges and priorities? And then how do we map messaging to those pain points and the goals they're looking to accomplish? So for example, if you're going after a chief revenue officer, you should know what are the 3 to 5 goals that they have and pain points that they have, and then we want to reverse engineer what those are and create messaging for them. So persona is actually messaging that you can do at scale, because it's more important to be relevant than to be personalized. So what do I mean by that? All of you in this room have probably received the email where they mention the college you went to, and it's like, go whatever, right? Go dogs, go whatever, and you're like, that's not even relevant to whatever you're talking about, right? So that's like personalization. What I'm talking about is being relevant. What is actually happening in their current role that's affecting the status of wherever they're at in their company and what they're trying to do? Now, as you grow and as you talk to customers and you're selling, those are the pain points you use in your outbound messaging to build pipeline. So you already have the answers. And I'll even make this easier for y'all. How many of y'all in this room use like call recording software? Okay, cool. If you don't, I'm slightly affiliated, Jared. So slightly affiliated with this company. Fathom. So it's a free recording software. It's free, and basically it will record all your conversations. Why is that important? What you can do is every sales conversation you have is actually a prospecting email or a prospecting video, because they mention all their pain points on the call if you're asking the right discovery questions, and if they close the deal and they tell you what their pain points are, then obviously that's something you need to say again. So what I do is I take all my transcripts from my calls and I just tell AI what are the common themes here of these buyers, and then we take those common themes and pain points and goals, and then we make prospecting messaging. That is the easiest thing for all of you in this room to do, because now we have AI. Before that wasn't even possible. But you literally could go home today and take all your transcripts of your calls, or moving forward, make it into pain point list, and it can do visuals for you too if you use Claude. And then from there, we now can make it create messaging that we can now prospect with. So these are very easy and simple things to do that will help you with the personas to then prospect at scale. So this middle one, in terms of emailing, is prospecting with relevancy at scale. And then the personal one, this is where we see, okay, did they win an award? Did they have an interview? There's a couple of things that we were mentioning earlier. I would just recommend not to mention, hey, saw you went on vacation last week. Don't be too personal. All right, so don't get creepy, like I said earlier. But you can mention things that they have done, right? Because this is essentially stroking the ego here. If they've done an ego or if they've done a podcast or an interview, we want to mention that. Not everyone's going to have that. But if they do, you can mention it, right? This is probably going to have your higher response rate, but again, harder to find. This one is scalability. If you can't find anything, this is really good because once you find a company insight, you can use it for 5 different people. So if I find that they have a product update, I could have 5 different messagings about the product update to 5 different personas that I'm trying to get in front of. So again, one insight, multi, scale, one-to-one. Talk to me.
So I assume these are, one-to-one emails from your CRM.
Correct.
Or from your inbox. But
Yeah. These are
not
these are
any kind of, cold or email as,
you could with this. You can with this one. You could send it as a campaign. You could send it to what personas do you go after? Like your buyers.
product managers.
Okay, cool. You could send this to product managers at scale. If you find their pain point, it's like, I've had 100 calls. I'm making this up. I've had 100 calls with product managers. They tell us their one thing is X. Here's how we solve it. Here's a use case. Care to chat. You could do this at scale with this email. I don't recommend doing it with like C-suites. I recommend this one because they probably have actual interviews. But a product manager or a manager probably doesn't have a whole lot of this yet. But they do have pain points. So we can do this at scale to get our conversations going. Does that help answer the question? Cool. So now that we have these 3, here's the framework on a couple things you could pay attention to. These are just stats on email. Because people always ask, what are the stats? These are the stats. We all can read. I'm not going to go through each one. But the one that I always like to point out to is, again, personalizing that email. And again, I just walked you through what that looks like. I say, let's just be more relevant, and you'll see that response. But again, the cold email response has started to go down, which is why I always start with LinkedIn, because it has a higher overall response. But sometimes they may not connect with us. They may not be on LinkedIn. So we got to resort to an email. And here's an example of that. So ultimately, here's our framework for an email. So a couple things that are not here that I'll mention to you all on what makes a great email from what we've seen from our clients and what I've seen from the work that I've done, and even for my own self as I do a lot of this messaging. One is an email that's 2 to 6 sentences has the highest response rate. As I say that, I know there are outliers, and if you have a technical persona, it might be more sentences. I understand that. But what we've seen is 2 to 6 have the highest response. Subject lines, which I'll break down here in a minute, highest response rates, less than 5 words in the subject line lead to the highest response rates and open rates. In terms of the email itself, I always recommend to send the email before people get into work or after the work is done. So if you think about it, right? If you're looking to get in front of other executives. Well, during the day, there's so much going on, that email's probably going to get lost. So if you send it at like, I'm giving an example, 6:30 to 8 a.m. local time, well, they're probably checking their emails before they go into that. And another one that I've seen to be absolutely great right now is 3 to 6 local time Sunday. Now, why? Why is that? Because again, we're trying to get in the heads of people that we're getting in front of. If you are another C-suite, another executive, you're probably checking your email or prepping for the week on Sunday afternoon. So that 3 to 6, that window doesn't have a lot of competition because most people aren't thinking that way and they're probably just chilling and hanging out. So by the way, you also don't have to send them on Sunday. You could schedule it on Friday to send out for Sunday and you don't have to worry about it. You can wake up in the Monday morning and have a really good guess because someone responded. So you don't have to send them actually on Sunday. You can actually automate them out on that Sunday, by the way. But 3 to 6 in that window, you're going to have a high response rate. They're already actively looking in their inbox. They're already prepping for the week. And again, the competition is low. And as I've said this a lot, it's very frictionless. There's not a lot of friction there. So when you're sending emails, you got to think about when would be the most friction. Well, it'd probably be at 9 a.m. in the morning because that's probably when a meeting's happening. So likelihood of getting a response is pretty low. So I always think about what are the frictionless hours that I could send emails, and those are just examples. Obviously, A/B test with your market, A/B test with your personas, but I'm giving you different baselines. So those are just the rules of the email. And the last thing that I'll say is always look and optimize as if they're reading it on a phone. So just always think phone first. I'm going to mention the date on this, but honestly, I think it's probably completely skewed at this point due to COVID and virtual, like people hybrid. Like I think it's changed so much, but they say 67% of emails are read on the phone. So again, I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but I probably say it's probably at least 45, 50. So at least we're in that realm. We have to think every email, they're going to read it on the phone. So here's this framework of an email if you can follow. So like I said, subject line, less than 5 words. To get a little bit deeper, 3-word subject lines actually do the best. I recommend every single email that you write the subject line last. And the reason for that is you want to take what you have in that email and find what can we use as a subject line to stand out. Now, when you write the subject line, if you are funny, be funny, but if you're not, I got some other stuff for you. So when you think about a subject line, the goal is to get their attention, but it's also to grab something that they would also know. So I'll give a very straightforward and simple example. So if I'm reaching out to someone and I want to do sales coaching with them, and we were just talking about LinkedIn, my subject line might be LinkedIn pipeline building. That's super straightforward, common language, no jargon. That's probably going to get open because they're going to want to check that out. Also, this is very, very granular. 2 things that you can do to actually increase open rates is take the words that people write and use them in their subject line. So I'll give you an example of that. If you go to someone's LinkedIn profile, look at their about section and see if there are words that you can pull from there to put in your subject line. Also as well, any job response. So let's say if people are hiring and it's within let's say it's in a department that you're trying to get in front of, go look at the job responsibilities and copy and paste anything in the job responsibilities that you can use in the subject line as well. So again, this is something that they already wrote. So subconsciously, they're actually already looking for these words. So psychologically, it's way easier for me to actually reach out to this person and get an open rate. Very, very granular, very nuanced, but that's the way of going about it. Now, once we got past the subject line, the intro, I'm not gonna go into this in too much detail here because tailored and targeted is basically what I just mentioned earlier when I said personal, company, and persona. It's the same thing. Your whole goal here is please do not start an email with hope all is well. That's all I'm asking for. Like that's the one thing you can evade. If you do that, you're not gonna get a response. So just don't do that. And then when you think of an email, the first 3 to 8 words is what we're paying attention to. So what are the first 3 to 8 words that we can do to stand out? Now, I'll give you examples. You could say, saw something on your website, I've been doing my research on this company, noticed your LinkedIn posts. I'm giving you examples, but the goal is how can you show that you've done some level of research? Now, make sure you actually do the research. Don't be like, saw this on the website and you don't have anything to say about it. Make sure you have something to say, but that's the goal there. Value point, we've already talked about that. It's basically your value prop. And then call to action, we've already talked about that. Same thing. So the call to action is the same thing. When I said the interest call to action, it's literally the same thing again. Nothing changes. Again, we're just writing an email here. And here's an example of an email that I sent that got a response. So you'll see here, like when I mention be brief, be brilliant, be gone, like I'm not saying a whole lot, because the goal in sending a message prospecting wise is to get a response so that I can actually dive deeper into what this means. So I talk about something I've noticed. Main focuses is inside of the description. They said their SDRs, they needed to focus on sales nav. So I called it out. I talked about the workshop and I said down the chat. It's very straightforward. When you think about emails, we want to think of them as darts instead of a machine gun approach. So what I mean by that is, I don't know if anyone here has played darts. So when you play darts, you don't throw every dart at once. I mean, you shouldn't, but like you don't throw every dart at once. You throw it one at a time. So when you do messaging, you do it one at a time. So I talk about sales nav here. I'll have another message about something completely different, but it's another email that I can have. So it's a dart approach. Machine gun is when you have a long email and you say your 5 value points. If they don't respond, you now have no more ammo left. And now you're just touching base and checking in. Did you see my email? Annoying things that don't get responses. So that's why we treat every email as a dart approach with different value points. So I have 4 to 5 emails to a person rather than just one email that gets ignored. And so this is just data on the interest call to actions, why I keep telling you this. So you all probably may or may not have heard of Gong, but they did a study on this. And they said cold emails that ask for interest and not the meeting have a higher success rate. Success rate means like legitimate reply to a meeting, not just random replies. Which, by the way, when you do emails and you are tracking it, because at some point as you build a sales team, you want to be able to tell them this is what works and what doesn't. Gauge things on positive reply rates and negative reply rates. Something could have a 99% reply rate and be absolutely awful. Let's go over an example. This is very drastic, but this is a real example. If I sent an email to people and just said, just kidnapped your family, that's going to have a 99% reply rate. That's going to be very negative. It's not going to be good. So I get a drastic example, hope that for no one, but the thing is, that would have a high reply rate, very negative reply rate though. So we want to look at it as positive reply rates that lead to meetings, so then we can figure out in the sentiment what works and what doesn't. Talk to me.
I have 2 questions.
Yep.
On the CTA front, and you hear about in sales, don't give people an opportunity to say no or yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
So like I saw them there, like, are you willing to chat? I know there's also this whole conversation around like I can send you a few times at work as
Yep.
part of make it more specific. Some people don't like the calendar link, some people do.
Yeah.
And then I've even had some success with like actually legitimately scheduling a meeting before they've even responded. They're like, yeah, I just put a meeting on the calendar for you. Oh, see you there.
Yep.
Like assuming the sale almost through the conversion. So when you think about calls to action and those tactics and the specificity of a call to action, like what does that really mean? Is that looking for, you willing to chat? I see that's kind of the CTA and a lot of your stuff, or does it go deeper? Is it more specific than something like that?
It goes deeper. So how many emails do you send per person?
Like to one prospect?
Yeah, like one prospect, yeah.
I don't know, probably. And I was going to ask about cadence next, but probably 10 maybe over the course of a month.
A month? Okay, cool. Everyone's similar, probably like 4 to 8 range for everybody else. Emails per prospect. See the nonsense? Okay, so when you think about this breakdown, one thing that you can test is put your calendar link in the signature line. So I'd recommend that for everyone to see, do you get meetings that way? Because sometimes people will just book directly to the link and not even reply to the email. Second thing is, I do the interest call to action because I want to start in light and then I get more direct. So let's say you said 10. So let's just do an even split 5-5. So the first 5 messages, I will do like, would you be open to learning more? Are you curious to have a deeper dialogue? But then once we get past that 5th message, I'm like, do you have 30 minutes? Do you have 20 minutes, right? Because at that point, you know who I am. You know who I am a little bit because I've been messaging you. And so now I'm being a little bit more direct on that end. What I also recommend though as a whole is to A/B test everything I'm saying, because in your persona or your market, that 30 minutes could be a hit. So great, ignore what I'm saying and do that. I'm talking holistically, this is what I've seen, but also I know there are nuances and outliers in every single thing I'm saying as well. So that's why I say A/B tested to see what works and what doesn't, because I've seen, even though, yeah, someone could easily say no to would you be interested, I have more yeses to a meeting than anything else.
Talking about cadence, I know I like the replying to the initial message. It kind of shows like, oh, there's a thread going. Generally, get pretty good success with that second
Yep.
email. But I think about, the framework of what happens in the middle. Generally, it ends with like a swan song. I guess you're not interested, kind of last ditch effort. But that middle piece of, do I just recycle back like the first email and just kind of repeat it with the darts you're talking about?
Yeah.
Or,
After your campaign's over?
well, so like if I say there's 10 emails over the course of 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it is, that first email, usually replying to that is my second email. The third email through that kind of final last ditch effort email, I'm struggling with like, do I recycle a lot of the same messaging that you're kind of suggesting in that first email?
Yeah.
Or like, how do you think about that middle piece of the cadence?
So if I was giving a recommendation, I would do less emails and I would do more multi-touches. So when you run a campaign, 80% of the responses come in the first 5 touches. So I try to figure out what are the most relevant and personalized things that I can do to stand out to get those responses. So my first touch is actually a LinkedIn connection request, because I know if they accept it, it gives me way more opportunities. But also as well, if they accept it, then they actually see my face. So the likelihood of them responding to anything I do moving forward will actually lead into a conversion, which is what we're looking for. So like that's like a core example. And then I'll do an email after that. And then it depends on what you want to do, call, or you can continue with LinkedIn. But for probably most people in this room, I'd recommend a LinkedIn email strategy back and forth. And I'd probably do 4-4. So I'd probably do 4 touches with a LinkedIn, 4 touches with the email, and then see if I want to decrease or elevate any of those moving forward. I want an even split to see what conversion rates actually work the most. And then I increase based on what works the best. So if LinkedIn's working very well, then I will do more LinkedIn touches. If the email is doing really well, I'm going to do more emails. And then what I do in terms of the messaging is all the messaging in the campaign will be different. And then whatever works, I try to fine tune and do more of that stuff. Yeah.
How do you feel about event-based CTAs? So the idea that like you have the same event every month, same time.
Yep.
You always have an event coming up. And one of your CTAs could be like, by the way, if you want to learn about this, there's an event. I got your free ticket if you want to join. Like, how do you feel about that?
Virtual, in person, it doesn't matter.
Virtual usually, I think, unless there's going to be some big industry event, but as
Yeah.
far as capability, virtual.
If it's, do you cap your events or are they just free?
I don't know. I mean, is there a formula for it to be successful? Like, we haven't started it, but I'm thinking of starting that just as like a way if they're interested. It's like do this, but you don't have to hard sell them.
You can do. So you can do the factor of exclusivity, like make it extremely exclusive, saying, hey, the reason I'm reaching out to you is I see that you're in the healthcare space and you're primarily the executives I typically speak to, and we're having a 150 person only event and thought this would be helpful for you based on these 3 things, and just give them bullet points and then invite them. Because if it is an exclusive invite and there's only 150 people, the priming of that and the psychology behind that is I'm more likely to show up. But if you just say, here's an event that I'm doing, I'm like, okay, whatever. But if it's 150 people that are my peers, I don't want to feel left out on that, and I got an invite, the likelihood of me showing up is a lot higher. So if you're looking to get people to show up, I'd make it more exclusive, interactive. You're going to hear from so-and-so. That's the way that I stage it so that I can get that feedback. Cool. All right, so I know I have 15 minutes left, so I'm going to make sure to make this timely. So we got all these meetings. We talked about stuff. Now, the problem with meetings is that typically people come unprepared. They can go all over the place. And if you don't have an agenda, it's not going to be good. And typically what happens is we give prospects the wheel and they drive us off the course. So the goal here is I'm going to show you a very simple way of how to run meetings, and you can modify them accordingly based on your target personas as well. So this is like very straightforward. Prepping for the call. Most of you already know this, but I'm going to bring up 2 things that you may not know about. So the first thing is Crystal knows. Now, this isn't a drug site, so everybody relax. But what this is it allows you to break down the disc profile and personality of the person you're about to speak to. Now, I do believe that if you go download this, again, Crystal knows, I believe it has 10 searches per month for free. So it's something that you can go check out and use yourself. But again, we just want to get a quick analysis of who this person is before we get on the call.
How does it do?
So it's broken down by what they post, how they comment, how they engage.
Or you just throw in a LinkedIn link and they analyze that?
Yeah, you just go to LinkedIn profile and then it tells you everything. And then the second thing is, what are the questions that you need to ask coming into the call? So if you don't have that already, I want you all to think about what are the 4 to 6 questions. If I don't ask these questions, like it's going to end up not being good for me. Now, I'm going to give you one question here today that if you ask this question, you will actually end up closing just more deals by default because you'll get better answers. And so the question that I tell every single salesperson, founder, it doesn't really matter what you're doing if you're selling, is asking people this question probably 20, 25 minutes into the call, once you've done a good discovery, is say, what happens if you don't make this decision? Now that question can have a lot of fear because like, wait, what if they say nothing? Well, that means that there's more work to be done. But we've also identified when you ask that question, they could be like, well, if I don't get this done, I might get fired in 3 months. All right, well, it's clearly a huge pain point. So that's just an example of something you can do to set yourself up. So ultimately, I just show this. If you're not doing this already, here's an example. If you are, fantastic. This is how I set an agenda before a call. So basically, I send this 24 hours before a call, and I say, here's what we're covering. Here are the questions. Here's how I'm going about it. It's extremely straightforward. So the reason for this is every call that I get on, they know what's happening, and they're not going to deviate from the agenda, which will happen if you don't tell them what it is. So I send this beforehand. I even have questions if it's relevant and necessary to what I'm looking to speak to them about. So again, this is a very straightforward, easy agenda. I send again 24 hours for the call. I also add this in the calendar invite, but I will tell you, most people don't look at their calendar invites and whatever's in it. So that's why we send this email to confirm and get an understanding of what exactly are they looking to accomplish here, and then going about it from there. Then I hold them accountable. So you'll see this email here. At the end of every single call, I send a summary email of what happened to get an understanding, did they agree with that or not? Now, the interesting thing about this is when you send this follow-up email to people and you do the summary, if they reply to the summary, there's a high likelihood that this deal will most likely close. But if they don't respond, I'm not saying it won't close, it's just lower likelihood. Because all we're doing here is just recapping what we heard and making sure that we're on the same page, which again, holds them accountable to what we discussed. And this is not the time to resell them on anything. We're just recapping. And so you'll see here, I mentioned what are their decision priorities. I talk about what timeline did we agree to. And then I also mentioned next steps. So basically it's what are the priorities or the goals that they discuss. Typically you want to do 3 to 4 bullet points. I mentioned in what timeline are they looking to accomplish that thing. And then I talk about what are the actual next steps we need to take. So within that, as we're wrapping this up, this is the flow of a discovery call that I train people on to get the most information. And the thing is, this is very, very simple, and anyone can execute this. And then from there, you can do whatever you want because you know the questions better than I do. I'm only here to give you the frameworks. So at the beginning of every single call, I always ask people if they have a hard stop. Why? Because I want to see if I have potential extra time. So it could be a 30-minute meeting, but if they say they don't have a hard stop, if the conversation is going well, I might have an extra 15 minutes, right? Just an example. So I always try to get an understanding of where I'm at. Then the next thing that I do is building real rapport. So real rapport is, hey, I looked at your website, saw you were doing this, saw you're hiring these people, saw you're doing this type of update. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Is this accurate? So when you start with insight at the beginning of the call, based on research you've done, it actually opens up the prospect to give you information you typically wouldn't get. And now as you get further psychologically into the discovery call, when you ask these deeper layered questions, they're more open because you came to the call as a subject matter expert instead of just another salesperson that didn't know what they were talking about, which is what most people are annoyed by. So if I come in with research, they're more open, and now I can get to these granular questions. Now, 2 more additional things I'm going to talk about. The upfront contract. Some people like it, some people don't, but I've actually found this to be helpful because it sets next steps automatically. So when the call, as like probably 5 minutes in, I'll be like, hey, typically this conversation goes 2 ways. One is that you find this conversation to be interesting and you like what you're hearing, we could potentially solve the problem. And we're probably going to need to talk to X and Y next. So I actually proactively find out who I need to talk to next, and I just directly call that out. So they can tell me it's that person or it's not. Then I say, or if you find this conversation to be awful, so I use self-deprecation, you don't have to do this, but I say, or if you find this conversation to not be useful, then it's okay to tell me no throughout the process, which I found that most people just directly won't tell you no. So you need to tell me no, so then you don't waste your time following up because you got other things to do. So then I say, does that sound fair? The reason I say does that sound fair because nobody wants to be unfair, so then they'll tell me it's fair. So now that they've agreed, at the end of the call, when I have 7 minutes left, I can then tell them, hey, do I need to go talk to Bob and Sally after this? And if they say yes, then now I'm actually getting more to power, which is the goal. Last thing is to clarify everything you ask questions on in the discovery. Now, again, I mentioned questions you can ask in the discovery, but as you ask the pain point questions, which is going back to persona, you always want to recap what happened. So I just call this like the pit stop. 13 minutes in, you want to be like, hey, this is what I've learned so far. Like, here's the current state of the problem that you have. Here are the things that are going on with that problem. Here's how we potentially discuss how we can help. Is that accurate or am I missing anything? And the goal is for them to say, this is accurate. And then now you're both on the same footing to then move forward from there. But if they say this isn't accurate and they mention some other stuff, we need to go do our due diligence to do more discovery to figure out what's going on. So those are just the steps in the discovery call for that to be successful. And as we route this out, here are other ways to follow up that I found to be helpful. If you can, I say always try to get their Slack. Best way to communicate with anyone, Slack, back and forth. Video follow-up, 25 seconds less. I just say, hey, is this if you have multiple decision makers? On LinkedIn, after we connect, I send them a video. Hey, typically when I see people in a meeting with multiple people, there may be a question or concern that you didn't want to mention to the group, but now that we're one-on-one, do you have any concerns of what's going on? I always try to address concerns throughout the sales cycle because that's actually what will kill the deal, is the concerns. So if I'm one-to-one, I can get that. And then WhatsApp, if you're selling internationally, I always mention that as well. Developing great questions. Ultimately, reverse engineer the persona, ask open-ended questions to go from there. And then on your next steps on the calendar, on the call, always ask for those next steps on the calendar so that you can go from there and make sure to loop additional people in. So this is it. This is just action steps moving forward. 3 things I always recommend people to do coming out of this workshop that you can go execute on. My recommendation is, if you took a lot of notes, took a few notes, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that you want to do moving forward? Find those things, execute on them, find out if they work for you, make adjustments, and then go from there. So that's all I got. That's it. And hopefully you all enjoyed it.